What is up, YouTube? Welcome back. Aeneas here. Today I am going through some of the new historic decks that got updated from the new set MTG Bro or the Brothers War. Some of them are brand new decks, and some of them are just some new card additions from the set that I think would make it into historic. So, without further ado, let's get into some of the cool new brews for historic on MTG Arena. All right, so if you didn't know, with the new set, The Brothers War, there is a bunch of artifacts that they have added to the set, kind of like with Strixhaven's set, there's the Mystical Archives. Now we're getting like these antiquities or things like that, which is a bunch of artifacts that are only legal in older formats and in limited. So that means historic, they're going to be legal. I think the only one that got banned, as far as I know, is Mishra's Bauble because they think it's going to be too broken, which it might be, So, anyway, all the other ones seem to be fair game, and so we've brewed some decks around some of those, and let me share them with you. All right, so the first deck, this is a brand new deck actually that I think might be good in historic. This is green-white artifacts. So before we had blue-white artifacts, which used a lot of the blue artifacts or artifact affinity type creatures. Also had the blue counterspell that gets cheaper for each artifact that you have. But in this set, we actually see some interesting green cards that are artifacts that I think could potentially make white-green or green-white artifacts a thing. It would be a more aggressive shell. The blue one was more of kind of a tempo deck. This one would be more aggressive. But yeah, let's take a look. All right, so the key cards I would say to start off, your one drops, Teething Wormlet. This is a 1 mana creature in green, and it says Teething Wormlet has Death Touch as long as you control 3 or more artifacts. So that's pretty decent, but you need 3 artifacts. And it says whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. And if it's the first time this happened, put a +1/+1 counter on Teething Wormlet. So basically each turn, as long as you play an artifact, this guy's going to get bigger. And no matter how many artifacts you enter the battlefield, you're going to get 1 life for each one. So even if you play 2 artifacts in a turn, it only gets 1 counter, but you still get the 2 life. And if you've been playing Historic, is it Wizards is kind of one of the big bad decks in the format, and it basically wins because they can just get enough damage in just in the nick of time to kind of beat you out. And so I think this one would have a good shot against that because you're going to have creatures that grow bigger, and you're going to be getting life, and that could be enough to push you over the edge on that deck. Alright, so besides that, we have the infamous Esper Sentinel. That's one of the best decks in Historic. It's a 1 white cost, just a white cost for a 1/1, and it says whenever the opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless that player pays X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power. So most of the time they don't want to even pay 1 mana, so you get to draw a card for free every time they cast a non-creature spell. And we have ways to make this bigger with some of the other cards you'll see in a second. So potentially this could be, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 power, and they definitely can't pay that cost. So you're going to be drawing cards from this for sure. And it's an artifact, so it synergizes with all your artifact stuff. So maybe an ideal turn would be something like Teething Wormlet plus next turn Esper Sentinel and maybe a removal or something like that. All right, so the other cards that we've added to this, we have, let me, I guess, go with more of the synergy cards first. So if you haven't played Historic, the blue-white artifact deck makes good use of this one, Nettle Cyst. Nettle Cyst is the very powerful artifact, 3 mana. It's got Living Weapon, meaning it gets attached automatically to a 0/0 creature when it first enters the battlefield. And it says, equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. It also has equip cost of 2, which is pretty cheap. So you play for 3, and it's going to be at least a 1/1. but since we have artifact synergy, by turn 3 we'll probably have at least 1 or 2 other artifacts on the battlefield, maybe even 3, and so it's going to get bigger and bigger. All right, I probably can't do too much more on this deck because we've got so many decks to talk about. So let me just quickly go through the rest. Michigo's Reign of Truth. Same thing, buffs your creatures based on your artifacts or enchantments. We have trying out the Springleaf Drum, which is a ramp card for artifact synergy decks and needs to tap an untapped creature. So we could go Teething Wormlet, Springleaf Drum, Esper Sentinel on turn 2, something like that, or even play more, maybe another Ginger Brute or something. So it just kind of helps fill out your artifact count and ramps you. We have removal, that's artifacts, Portable Hole, Glass Casket, and some hasty damage with Ginger Brute or Lion Sash, and also hasty damage with Simian Simulacrum, stuff like that. And just Clay Champion, also another way to buff your team or to play a really large creature that you can equip onto, stuff like that. So all of them synergize super well together to make kind of an aggressive, go big and a little bit wide green-white artifact deck. And then the mana for this deck is pretty sweet as well. We got the new Brushlands. There's of course Blinkmoth Nexus. We have Spire of Industry to help you cast your spells. And you may even want to play the artifact lands in here. I didn't put them in yet, but yeah, that's probably something you might want to think about adding. All right, so that's the first one. Really cool new deck that's coming that can be in the new set. The next one I'm looking at is a blue-white artifact control deck. This one, I'm hoping to make use of this new card, Ivory Tower. Basically, it gains you 1, 2, or 3 life each turn, depending on how big your hand size is. So you gain life equal to the max hand size, so 7 minus, sorry, let me say that again. You gain life equal to your hand size minus 4. So if your hand is 6 cards in hand, you'll gain 2 life in your upkeep. If your cards in hand is 5, you'll gain 1. If it's 7, you gain 3, etc. Okay, so basically you want to keep cards in hand so that you gain life. That's kind of like the whole point. Well, when you're playing a control deck, it's more easy to keep cards in hand because you're waiting to do like a sweeper on turn 4 or something like that. So that's the idea. Play the Ivory Tower turn 1, hopefully, and then kind of keep the rest of the cards in hand until you need them. We have Archmage Charm, we have some artifact removal, we have Thought Monitor to draw cards, etc. And Well of Lost Dreams, whenever we gain life off the Ivory Tower, we can draw cards. So might have to tweak around with the numbers, might need a little bit more counter spells and a little more draw on the deck, but I think there's probably something here with that. And then our top end are these Planeswalkers. We got Karn the Great Creator to fetch whatever we need from the sideboard. As we're fetching cards, it's card neutral because we played a Planeswalker, we drew a card. So you're still keeping your hand pretty full with that. Teferi, the new Teferi is going to draw you cards. Of course, there's Tezzeret here, which also can draw you cards because you draw 2 and then discard 1. So your hand's going to be full from that, and you can also turn your Ivory Tower into a 4/4 if you really need to, or one of your other artifacts into a 4/4. So lots of cool synergies now in Historic with that. So I'm interested to see if this is enough to make this sort of deck work in Historic. All right, and then we also got a new creature card in Historic, Sundering Titan. It's a very interesting card. Especially against certain decks because there's a lot of decks that are playing more than one more than one color in Historic. So Is It Wizards has 2 colors, and of course there's what else is there? I know there's mono white decks. There's like a bunch of Rakdos decks in Historic. Sometimes there's Jund, and they're all playing these like really greedy lands. Well. If you play a Sundering Titan, you get to destroy a land of each type. So hopefully they'll have like a Triome or like the Shock lands, stuff like that, which have land types on them, and you can destroy those. So potentially you could destroy maybe like 2, 3 of the opponent's lands, something like that, when this comes in. So it's a little bit degenerate, but if you like doing degenerate stuff, then Sunray Titan might be your guy. And it does it when it enters and when it leaves. So even if they have like, I don't know, like 2 mountains, 2 non-basic lands, and then like a Triumph, it enters, kills 2 of their lands, and then they kill it, kills another one of their lands, so they've lost 3 total lands. That's still pretty good for you, and that's 3 for 1 value basically, or 4 for 1 because they had to kill your creature. So anyway, that's kind of the plan. This deck is also using Ivory Tower to try to keep you alive, stabilize you. We've got a bunch of sweepers here with Day of Judgment, Wrath of God, Farewell, to after you've like ramped a bunch, try to like stabilize the board, keep you alive until you can get the Sundering Titan down. And this is ramping with all these artifacts, 2 mana artifacts that give you mana, and the Forsaken Monument, which every time you tap a colorless land, you get double mana. So that's basically you're just trying to ramp with these artifacts and with your colorless land to get out your big stuff, Ulamog, Sundering Titan, Ugin, or even Karn. Alright, so that is the kind of like colorless Tron with Sundering Titan. And because you don't have colored lands, you don't have to blow up your own lands, which is good. There is also this version of the deck, which is using the Quicksilver Amulet. That's another new card in Historic. Quicksilver Amulet says, for 4 mana and then 4 and a tap, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. So basically, I mean, in a perfect world, you would play this and activate it on the same turn, but you're trying to ramp, so probably you're going to play this on turn 3 and then activate it on turn 4 as long as it doesn't get blown up. I would say the artifact removal in Historic is not that great, so probably you have a pretty good chance to have it happen, though there is like Holigan's Command and Prismari Command, which see some play, so it's possible that they can have an answer for it, but it's still worth a shot. And even if that doesn't work out, the creatures and stuff is not that expensive that you couldn't possibly cast it by itself at some point. But yeah, we're using Quicksilver Amulet, and the objective is to play Sarah's Emissary and Sundering Titan on turn 4. That is your goal. Play it on turn 4, and hopefully win the game once those resolve. So how do you play it on turn 4? You play your lands, and we have the 2 mana Artifact Rocks. We have 12 of them. So turn 2, you play an Artifact Rock. Turn 3, you untap. You play your land for turn. Now you're at 4 mana, right? So turn 3, you're at 4 mana. Head of curve, you play your Amulet. And then if it survives 1 turn, you play your big creature, your Emissary or your Sundering Titan, and hopefully win the game. Okay, so that's the plan for that one. That's another version of Sundering Titan ramp. We also have this new deck, Green-Black Charbelcher. So full disclosure, this is actually Deathsea's list. I tried to think if there were some improvements I could make to the deck, but to be honest, I don't really see a whole lot that can change. Possibly you would cut maybe like 2 of the Gilded Gooses for maybe Village Rites or something, or I don't know, even some more discard. I don't know. Or maybe you remove the Thoughtseize if you don't think it's really necessary, but play something else in this spot to try to help you make sure you ramp quickly enough. Yeah, I think you have to play around and see. But overall, the deck is just solid, and basically it's like a 1-turn kill on turn. It could be as early as like turn 4, 1-turn kill. So how does it work? You play all these ramp creatures turn 1, turn 2, maybe turn 3, and then turn 4, hopefully, you have 4 mana, plus you have like 3 of these ramp creatures up. So you play your Charbelcher, and you activate it immediately. And what does Charbelcher say? Well, it says, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card, and then Goblin Charbelcher deals damage equal to the number of non-land cards revealed this way to the target creature or player. So in a normal deck, right, you're going to do like 2 or 3 damage. It's like, it's not that much. But This one plays no lands, so therefore you're gonna deal, the rest of your deck, like 43 damage to the opponent. So how do we get away with playing no lands? Well, we have all of the dual face cards, right? The modal lands. So on the front, this is a sorcery. This one's a sorcery. This one's a sorcery. This one's a sorcery. This one's a creature. This one's a creature. So we actually do have like, what is it? Like 24 lands, something like that. 4, 8, 12, 16, 24. 28. We have 28 lands. But because they're all not lands on the front side of the card, Charbelcher doesn't see them and as lands, so it just goes through all of them, and you just go through your whole deck. So, yeah, so it's basically one turn kill as soon as you can play this card and uh, use it. So pretty sweet. Seems super powerful. You can also have your Diabolic Intent to help you find it. So that's make sure you don't miss. So as long as your board doesn't get constantly killed, you're gonna win on turn 4. If it does get killed, you could still win on turn 5 potentially. So yeah, seems like it's gonna be pretty strong. All right, next one, blue-white Big Bro Teferi. So we've already had Teferi, Hero of Dominaria in Historic. It's a menace. I don't know how you feel about UI control. Sometimes it really annoys me, but I remember back when it was in Standard, it was so fun to play. So yeah, you might hate it, you might like it, but I think potentially we're going to put the other Tef 5 in with this Tef 5. So we're going to have double Tef 5s in the deck and just go crazy. Both of them drawing you cards and getting lots of value from that. So that's definitely happening. And then new edition, Soul Partition. This one is kind of like Fateful Absence, but even better because you can target your own stuff. And if you actually, even if you target your own creature, it doesn't have the 2 extra costs attached to it. So it's still just the same cost to play it again. So that's crazy too. So anyway, Soul Partition seems like it could be really good to protect your stuff and make sure they can't kill your planeswalkers. Yeah. And then blue-white was already good at drawing cards, so it's still going to be good at drawing cards. Just kill everything, play your big Teferis, and win the game. That's how this one rolls. All right. So moving on. The next deck I think could potentially be better is the Dimir Gearhulk deck. I played a version of this before on ladder, and I talked about it during the last set. But there's a pretty decent Gearhulk Dimir shell that's playable in Historic. It's a tier about 1.5. I think with some of the new cards, it definitely got a little bit better, like Cast Down and I don't know. There was a few other cards. Tainted Indulgence helped, stuff like that. So slightly upgrading that deck now. I put in Dreams of Steel and Oil, and you might think, is that really good enough for Historic? But hear me out. Hear me out. So the most popular decks in Historic, at least in Best of 1, and probably Best of 3 as well, is It Wizards, which plays a lot of creatures, right? The other best of 1 decks that you've come into are like the Greasefang decks, which plays creatures and really annoying creatures that you want to exile. And what else is there? There's the dragon combo, the uh, whatever that one's called, Dragonstorm combo, which has big dragons that you want to exile. And well, I don't even know what else is there, but there's so many decks in Historic that play creatures and that you want to exile them. So it just seems to make sense to play this card. Like, you get to exile a card from their hand, and even if you happen to miss, you might still get value out of it by exiling something from their graveyard as well. So yeah, it seems pretty good to me. Will it hit all the time? No. Will it hit probably 85% of the time and exile the thing, which makes it even better? Yes. So I think in my book that makes it probably worth. And if you know that they're a creature heavy deck, you can always flash this back later for value, as you will see with this guy here. So Dreams of Steel and Oil, cool card, potentially really good at Historic. We'll see, but I'm really interested in it. And then we have this new card that I added in, and I replaced for Narset because Narset was good, but one downside is Narset can't get the Gear Hulk. So that was always kind of annoying that she would always put the Gear Hulk on the bottom of your deck, and then you're like, oh, I really need my Gear Hulk, but I can't find it. So now we have Arcane Proxy, kind of like Snapcaster Mage, but no flash, so that is bad. But 3 mana for a 2/1 that recasts something from your graveyard for free. And so you can recast your Dreams of Steel and Oil, you can recast your Thoughtseize, you can recast your Drown in the Loch, your Tainted Indulgence, probably about, almost 90% of your deck. There's only like Archmage Charm and Divide by Zero and Memory Deluge and stuff which you can't cast. So that's not that bad. So most everything you can cast. And then late game, you can cast it for 7 mana, and now it's got 4 power, so it can cast anything that's 4 CMC or less. So that is nearly the entire deck, except for, I think, 2 cards, Shadow's Verdict and Thought Distortion. So, yeah, if you get to play for 7, you go to town, you get a lot of value off that. It's basically another Gear Hulk at that point, so pretty sweet. And I'm trying something cute here with Essence Flux. I think there could be potentially another deck with Arcane Proxy and Ephemerate, which I really want to try out later. But for now, I'm testing it out with this Essence Flux. So how this can work is, one, you play the Arcane Proxy while Essence Flux is in your graveyard, and you get to blink yourself. And when you blink yourself, this comes back as a 4/3, and it enters the battlefield. So it immediately becomes a 4/3, and you get to cast another spell that's 4 CMC or less. So that's huge value right there. Or you play this on 3 and you have Essence Flux in your hand, then you can cast it on the next turn to cast another spell. Or you can cast it on the Gear Hulk later in the game to get another spell from that. I don't know. There's just a lot of things you can do with it. So it has pretty good value on all these creatures, but it doesn't have value when you don't have a creature so much. So maybe a lot of times you'll just want to pitch it with the Tainted Indulgence and then cast it later when you get the Arcane Proxy for more value. So seems pretty good. And yeah, so really want to try that out. Seems cool. Okay, so that was the Dimir Gearhulk version. Here's another version of Dimir for your Dimir lovers. This one is one I have done in the past in the Neo set, and it was very good, but it just felt like it was just missing a little something, especially well, to be honest, when Memory Lapse was still legal, it was really good and it was really fun. But Memory Lapse is gone. People hate it so much and it got banned. Ah, sad. I really loved it. Because I wasn't playing in any broken decks, just in my own personal Dimir control. But anyway, Infinite Dimir was pretty good and makes use of this card, Tome of the Infinite, which if you haven't tried it, it's very fun. Gets you tons of value. You get a broken spell every turn. Sometimes it works well for your deck, sometimes not, but you get it every turn, so you're going to eventually get what you need out of it. So that's why it's called Infinite Dimir. And the new additions to this deck, we got the Dreams of Steel and Oil. Again, what I mentioned before, so many decks in Historic have creatures that you want to exile. So this is going to help you with that. And added a Go for the Throat because, at least currently in Historic, there's not that many artifact creatures. I think the only time there's an artifact creature is like specifically the UI artifacts deck. Every other time there's not. So having a way to kill those creatures, like every other single creature, is going to be really helpful to have that. So that's why I added that one over a Heartless Act. And I went for Karn in this version to give even a little bit more flexibility. So we have the new card, the Stone Brain, in the sideboard with the card. Basically, it's kind of like an Unmoored Ego. You name a card, and the opponent, you exile all those cards with the same name from their hand, their library, their graveyard, everywhere. So if you're up against like a combo deck, this is a good way to stop the combo because you just remove all of the card that they need out of their deck. So you can get rid of Mizzix Mastery, You can get rid of the Dragon Storm. You can get rid of whatever the combo piece is, Grease Fang, whatever. So normally you don't want to play those cards in your deck because they're dead a lot of the time. But if it's in your sideboard, well, that's not so bad because it's not wasting slots in your deck, right? So I think having that as an availability makes Karn a little bit more appealing. So we got one of the Karn in there to go along with that, with our Tome of the Infinite and our other stuff. And then finally, Underground River. I think this could be really big for Dimir and Historic, though life is a big importance in Historic. Usually you have a little bit of room to play with as long as you can reliably like kill your opponent's creatures. And one of the struggles that you sometimes have with the Dimir decks was that it's hard to cast your like 1 mana discard and hold up your mana for Archmage Charm or have up mana up for Narset. Hard to have like the double blue and the double black. So you usually had to kind of pick. Well, if you have Underground River, you're going to more often be able to hit those different requirements with the double blue or the double black. So I think that could make it good enough to try out because you're going to always hit your 1-drop here with your discard spell. So that would be pretty sweet. All right, so those are kind of the new things for Infinite Dimir, which I also think is a very, very promising looking Dimir deck. And then finally, of course, I have to update my Grixis Bolus list, which is still dominating Historic. I still always have like over 65% win rate with this deck. It's just a great deck. So if you haven't tried it out and you love Grixis, give it a shot. Making Bolus good again. That's my mission in Historic, and boy, has he been good for me. So yeah, the deck is about Nicol Bolas, the Dragon God, and Nicol Bolas, the Ravager, and then we have some other cards like Croxa, which are just annoying to deal with that get rid of the opponent's cards. Kalidas, exile the opponent's annoying creatures and get you some zombies and life gain. Liliana, remove the things that can't be targeted, etc., etc. A lot of other cool control and value cards. Check out my video on this if you want to know more and the deck text I made about it. So the only new addition to this deck really that I think would be helpful is swapping out the 3-mana sweeper that we had before. I'm drawing a blank on the name, but there was a 3-mana sweeper which you can also cycle for 3 mana. The cycling was very useful. So I'm a little bit hesitant to swap it out, but the difference is this new one, the Brotherhood's End. 1 in red, deal 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker, which is kind of nice. And it also has the ability to destroy all artifacts with mana value 3 or less. So I want to test it. I'm not 100% sold on it, but being able to hit the planeswalkers is pretty big against the blue-white deck, where this card was often very dead. But you can potentially kill a Narset and kill a Teferi, or almost kill a Teferi and then kill it with some other spell. So that seems pretty good. And then destroying the artifacts is not nothing. Like there's quite a few decks that play artifacts in them in Historic, so being able to destroy them would be good. And if you go against the U-White artifacts deck, this is just going to win you the game because it will literally kill their entire board. So yeah, that seems pretty sweet. There's like the artifact refinery deck as well, which is super annoying. And yeah, just destroying that. Or the creativity deck, Jeskai Creativity, getting rid of all their artifact tokens. That will be pretty helpful for that one as well. So I think that upside could make it where it's just a better fit for this deck. So gonna try it out, and that's my upgrade for the Grixis deck. So yeah, check it out. Try it out on the ladder. Have some fun. Bolus is sweet, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Okay, well that wraps up the historic new decks and upgrades that I had for the new set. I think I actually missed one. There was the Is It Wizards is of course getting the Monastery Swift Spear. So if you're a big fan of Wizards, switch out some of your other worst creatures for the Swift Spear. It's got haste, it's got prowess, pretty sweet. Okay, but yeah, that really wraps it up. Let me know what you think. Which ones do you like the best? Do you have other new ideas for historic that I didn't cover? Let me know. We'll try it out on my channel during my weekly content of MTG. And until next time, see ya.